Good morning, I'm Gary DeWall, and this is Bridging the Week for August 8th to 12th, and today is August 15th, 2016. A week ago Friday, a federal court refused to dismiss a lawsuit brought by the plan administrator for MF Global against the firm's former accounting and auditing firm for its alleged wrongdoing in providing advice that the plan administrator claims led to MF Global's collapse. In addition, over a vehement objection by one commissioner, and I mean vehement, staff of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission restricted Futures Commission merchants from investing customer funds in certain money market funds beginning October 14, 2016, except for their own funds in segregation in excess of a required buffer. It continues to be too hot and steamy in New York City, so I can quickly figure out a way to stay cool. Let's get started. PricewaterhouseCoopers failed in its effort to have a federal court in New York City dismiss a malpractice claim brought against it by the plan administrator for MF Global Holdings for the accounting and auditing firm's alleged role in the collapse of MF Global in 2011. According to a complaint filed previously by the plan administrator, PwC engaged in quote-unquote extraordinary and egregious professional negligence in approving MF Global's accounting methods for certain transactions in European sovereign debt known as repurchase to maturity or RTM transactions, and for certain tax advice. The plan administrator claimed that MF Global's accounting records understated MF Global's precarious financial state prior to its collapse because of PwC's advice. PwC sought dismissal of the plan administrator's claims through a motion for summary judgment, arguing that the plan administrator could not show that PwC's advice, as opposed to MF Global's own decisions to engage in RTM transactions, caused MF Global's failure and subsequent harm to shareholders. Thus, assuming facts most favorable to the plan administrator, each party was likely at worst an equal wrongdoer, said PwC, a defense known as in pari delicto. However, in ruling against PwC, the court held that PwC had not satisfied its burden at this time to demonstrate the absence of, quote, any genuine issue of material fact on the in pari delicto defense or on the plan administrator's claim, end of quote. Staff of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission issued both an interpretation and no action relief prohibiting Futures Commission merchants and derivatives clearing organizations from investing customer funds in money market funds that reserve the right to suspend redemptions for up to 10 business days and or impose liquidity fees under certain circumstances. This action follows the adoption by the Securities and Exchange Commission in August 2014 of new rules that require a money market fund to retain authority to suspend investor redemptions under enumerated circumstances and or to impose liquidity fees if a fund's liquidity drops below a threshold amount. Money market funds investing in corporate debt securities, so-called prime money market funds, must mandatorily adopt these conditions, while money market funds investing in government securities, so-called government money market funds, may elect but are not mandated to adopt these requirements. According to staff, when the SEC's rules are effective on October 14, 2016, FCMs may no longer invest customer funds in government money market funds, electing to impose the new requirements, so-called electing government money market funds, or in any prime money market funds, as FCMs will not be able to ensure that they can redeem 100% of their investments in such funds by the business day following the redemption request as required by applicable regulation. However, staff expressly authorized FCMs to invest their own funds maintained in customer segregated accounts in excess of their targeted residual amount, meaning a buffer of a firm's own capital an FCM is required to maintain in its customer segregated accounts to help ensure customer safety. They may invest this money in prime or elected government funds. CFTC Commissioner Sharon Bowen blasted this carve-out permission for FCMs as creating a window dressing of customer protection, claiming that, quote, if the funds are not suitable investment for customer funds, then they are not suitable for the additional capital the FCMs put in the accounts to protect against potential shortfalls. End of quote. BlueLinx Holdings Inc., a publicly traded company listed on the New York Stock Exchange, agreed to pay a fine of $265,000 and to certain undertakings to settle charges brought by the Securities and Exchange Commission that the company impermissibly inhibited whistleblowing by ex-employees. According to the SEC, Lynx Holdings included provisions in severance agreements with ex-employees that prohibited them from sharing confidential information about the company learned while employed with any third party unless, quote, compelled to do so by law or legal process, end of quote. This prohibition, said the SEC, violated provisions of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act that encourage whistleblowing, and an SEC regulation that prohibits any person from impeding an individual, quote, from communicating directly with the Commission staff about a possible securities law violation, including enforcing or threatening to enforce a confidentiality agreement with respect to such communication, end of quote. 2 years after the SEC adopted this rule, BlueLinx amended its severance agreement to authorize whistleblowing, but added a standard clause requiring ex-employees to waive their right to any monetary recovery in connection with any complaint or charge filed with an administrative agency. BlueLinx agreed to add a provision to all its severance agreements expressly permitting ex-employees to file charges or complaints with administrative agencies and to collect any relevant award among its undertakings in connection with its settlement. And finally, a federal court of appeals in the District of Columbia upheld the constitutionality of the Securities and Exchange Commission's administrative law judges to hear SEC-initiated enforcement proceedings. The petitioners in the action, Raymond J. Lucia Companies, Inc., and Raymond J. Lucia, had argued that hearings before such tribunals violated the U.S. Constitution because the administrative law judges hearing and deciding such actions were not appointed by the President of the United States. However, the appellate court rejected this argument, claiming that because the SEC retains discretion to review an ALJ's initial decision on its own initiative or upon a petition for review by a party or aggrieved person, only the SEC's own order represents the final determination in an administrative proceeding. Since the U.S. President appropriately appoints SEC commissioners, SEC administrative hearings are lawful, said the appellate court. Following an administrative hearing, the SEC previously imposed sanctions on the petitioners for violating its rules against misleading advertising by investment advisors. Generally, the SEC may bring enforcement actions in either an administrative tribunal or a federal court. Well, that's it for this week's edition of Bridging the Week. As always, there is more information in each article and more articles on the article version of Bridging the Week on the website. Check it out. I'm Gary DeWall. Have a great week, and until next week, ciao.